I am the former executive director of the Bromley Heath Tenant Management Corporation, the first in the nation. I think um, the condition of the development, of the lack of respect, was one of the factors that made the tenants determine that they wanted to have a say in where they lived. It was the pride and compassion they had for their community. It had deteriorated to the point where there was nowhere for them to go except up. And so they started organizing, and that took, they used 5 principles to do that. One was just to mobilize people, bring them together so they could begin to talk. Then organize them and give some structure to the organization. Then educate them about the issues and the powers to be that they had to work with. And then negotiate the best contract that they could get in order to do it. The second part of the question was how did the powers to be react to it? Of course, no one, and this was the Boston Housing Authority, was owned and managed the property at that time. The top echelon of the staff was supportive, but the workers, the maintenance workers, the accountants, all of those people, they did not want tenants involved because it meant that they would lose some of their powers, they thought. But tenants spent probably a year or more organizing, getting themselves ready so that when they entered into a contract with the Housing Authority, they were well prepared and could do a great job, we think. Beginning, the tenants started working on other projects that affected their lives, like Columbia Point. That was another large development in South Boston, 1,504 units. And over there was where they had the city dump, where all the waste from all over the city, all the developments, were dumped there. And that was causing pollution and health hazards for the residents. And they asked for Bromley residents and other residents to help them organize to change that. And so Bromley joined in with the other groups, and they were able to close the dump. Well, Bromley viewed that as a success. They had won. That was a victory. So that motivated the rest of the residents to take on different projects, and they took on all kinds of things. They brought into the community the anti-poverty program that helped people who were low income, had nothing. They brought that program in. That program provided educational opportunities and all that. They looked around, they needed a health center. They were able to negotiate with Harvard School of Public Health and the Peter Brigham Hospital to bring a health center into the area. And then they looked around the supermarket. So all of these things were successes. And a community group, in order for them to sustain themselves and keep going, they've got to feel a sense of self-worth and see that there are things that they can accomplish. And once they did all these things, they decided, well, the next phase, they wanted to manage their community, Bromley Heath. And at that time, Bromley Heath had really deteriorated to the point where department stores did not want to bring in deliveries. They could not get mail. It was just in poor condition. But the tenants organized and petitioned the Housing Authority and HUD for an opportunity to test the feasibility of resident management in their community. And they did all of the things that were necessary, identifying people who would work in key roles such as the management, accounting, maintenance, and whatever, and did an extensive plan on what would happen when they took over. And on January 1, 1973, the tenants signed a contract with the Housing Authority to manage the development, and they did that for 42 years. And in doing that, a lot of education took place. They were able to work with HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and the federal government to help write the 1987 Housing Act. And in that act, it gave residents an opportunity to manage their own development after they met certain requirements, and also gave them monies that would help them to organize. And so we not only did that in Boston, but shared it with other housing developments throughout the nation and abroad. Well, in 1998, drugs were rampant throughout the city. But Bromley had always worked with substance abuse and other programs. So even though we had drugs, because we are not a sterile community, there were drugs in our community, it was not like throughout the whole city. And I personally believe that a lot of it was because the residents and me personally had become, I don't know if you want to say powerful or respected throughout the nation. Bromley Heath was a model for what tenants could do all over, and there were a number of tenant management corporations throughout the nation. And so this drug raid was pulled on Bromley, where I believe there were 13 young men that were arrested for drugs. Now, drug dealing had been happening all over, but this made national news and abroad. And at that time, they wanted to say that I was kind of the drug czar or whatever. And of course, all of the young people, respected us. And I never, ever shone my back on anyone, because I felt that there was good in everybody. And so they didn't like that. You know, they said we were condoning it. The housing authority locked everyone out. It was just terrible. But we, the residents, never gave up. The Tenant Management Corporation was given some space in another location. They used doors and orange crates as their desk, and they did the work that they had to do for probably 6 or 8 months. They negotiated a new contract with the housing authority, and then was allowed to manage again. And they still talk about it till this day. If there's an article in the paper, they're going to refer back to that. But it never bothered you, because if you know within yourself what the real goals are, what you've done, the compassion, your innocence, you can put your head high and keep going. You got to really know who you trust, who's really in your corner, and what are their motives. And to be, probably I would be a lot harder on staff in performing some of their roles, because sometimes you give people so many chances, and I'm not sure if that's always really a good thing to do, because sometimes you just have to, cut your losses and move on. And I think that's one of the most important roles that I would do. One of the lessons I've learned, and another is to force more responsibility on the residents in every aspect of the management. The sense of family, the sense of pride that was instilled in the community, the respect they have for themselves and whatever, no matter what, you can't take that away. You see the potential and you keep pushing. And there are so many successes that we can point to in Bromley Heath. We have doctors, lawyers, architects, everything that's in every other community. And we didn't confine the things that we did just to our location, Bromley Heath. We were part of the neighborhood, part of the city, part of the state, and part of everything nationally. So those are the legacies that people can't take from you. When I get a phone call from somewhere across the country and they've done such great things, you can take pride in that. And you know that your work was not in vain.